Hello, I'm Emily Edwards, an intern with Klamath Film, and what you just watched was The Lost Years of Shakespeare, a film filled with mystery. It's a short film in our Southern Short Cake through college. And with us today is our film director, Tabitha Wheeler. Tabitha, it's finally nice to meet you.
So nice to meet you too.
So I'll be asking you a few questions today, and in your little description box, I saw that you said you were a recent graduate at a college. Um, did you take any classes or do anything involved with film while you were in college?
Yeah, so I just graduated in June of this year from Southern Oregon in Ashland, Oregon,
Mhm.
and I did about 5 years there. And over the course of that time, a lot of it was COVID years, so we kind of weren't in production. I had a freshman year in person, and then COVID hit my sophomore year. So it wasn't until my senior year of college, when we entered capstone season, which is our big thesis project at the end of it all, that
Mhm.
I really got the opportunity to make something. And so that ended up being The Lost Years of Shakespeare. So this is actually the first film that I've ever made, the
Mhm.
first time working with a crew, first time we're running a campaign to raise money for the film, and all those kinds of things.
So you were doing college through COVID. So were you also doing those doing film programs during the COVID, like classes and whatnot?
Yeah, we went from in-person classes, of course, to the online classes just
Mhm.
like everyone else. And so I was kind of working full time doing other things and then taking classes online. And of course, working in film, that's not the most helpful method of learning because film is a trade and you want to have hands-on experience. So,
Mhm.
um, even though we were doing those online classes, it was a lot more theory than practice. And so, it was very difficult and
Mhm.
very sad for us all, I think.
So, as I was watching your film, I was always, whenever I watch any kind of film, I always wonder what the person's thought process was. So, when you were trying to figure out a film to make, what gave you the spark, the idea to do something about Shakespeare?
Yeah, so Ashland, is very well known for the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, as you probably
Mhm.
are very familiar with, and I just felt with, especially with COVID and everything, the kind of shutting everything down, I was kind of looking for a story that people in the local community would care about because I wanted to
Mm.
do something big with a lot of people and a lot of cool spectacles, and, through that, I realized we needed some money to do that, and I was like, "What would people give us money for?" So it kind of started with I've always been really into sword fights and action
Mhm.
adventure, and my favorite movie is Pirates of the Caribbean. So it started with the sword fight, and then I was like, "Well, to have a sword fight, you gotta have a story, obviously, you can't just have the swords." So built a story around that, with places that were really close to home, with beautiful buildings like Ashland Springs, with
Mhm.
beautiful sets, like at the Elizabethan with Oregon Shakespeare Festival. And then we also kind of were able to connect with some local businesses. And I felt like it was just kind of a way to bring life into a place where we had all kind of been dormant for so long. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, so that's kind of how it originated.
Did you have to get any kind of donations for your film?
Yeah, so, in March of I think it was 2022,
Mhm.
we did a crowdfunding campaign, with the goal of $6,000
Mhm.
and ended up raising
Oh.
$7,600. So, we had a little bit of spending money on top of, you know, reaching our goal, and I had kinda set that goal mainly for travel because I knew we wanted to go to the beach, and I knew we wanted to go up to Portland, and, I had no idea what other kind of expenses might come our way, but I just knew that we would be, you know, doing a lot, and especially when it came to things like we have, a secret passageway, I wanted room to be able to create that, as its own set because it's
Mhm.
like, where are we gonna find these things? Like, where's the secret passageway? So yeah, that was super helpful to have that money. And then by the end, when we had a few extra dollars, it's like, we can buy the crew Chipotle for lunch, like custom orders. So it was really nice for crew morale as well.
Mhm. So talking about location, what was it like to have to travel from coast and stuff like that just to get those shots? What,
Yeah,
like, did it make the film process longer? Was it like, how hard was it to do the location changing?
yeah, it was really hard, and actually,
Mm,
I mean, it wasn't hard so much as it took a lot of planning, but even, as someone who went through a film program where everyone tells you,
mm,
like, you can shoot for months for 30 seconds, I was still blown away by packing up, like, 10 to 12 people, driving to Portland. We stayed the night up there,
mm,
and we shot all day, this big sequence, and it was 30 seconds of the film, and I think seeing that firsthand for the first time, I was like, "Okay, yeah, people weren't kidding when they were like, you have to do so much for such a short period of what you actually end up seeing on screen." But I
mm,
think one of the hardest parts was, um, having not been there before. So, you're always supposed to do your location scout, all those things, but with limited money and being in college, you can't really drive to these places
mhm,
beforehand. So what ended up happening is the first trip that we took to the coast, we shot all day. It was an amazing day, beautiful weather, but we got a little sidetracked with how pretty it was on the beach, and we
mhm,
didn't end up getting exactly what we needed. So that cost us a lot of money to go all the way there and back without what we needed.
mhm,
Um, and so I ended up just telling myself it was worth it to make the drive to Portland to do location scout, because if taking, 4 people to the coast was a big deal to have to do twice, I don't want to take 12 people to Portland 2 times. So yeah, it was very difficult because the stakes were higher because there was no redos. Um, and yeah, a lot more logistics.
In film, usually, um, people when they go to their location, they film everything that they need at that location. Is that what you did? Like, you filmed as much as you needed when you were in Portland at Portland?
Yeah, thank goodness too, because when we went to Portland, we were able to get everything and more,
Mm,
than what we ended up using, versus when we had gone to the coast, we didn't get what we needed, and we really were supposed to. Like, that was just, like, a mess up of being first-time filmmakers,
mhm,
um, but, I think that everything happens for a reason, and it gave us a much clearer vision going back the second time of exactly what we wanted to see on screen,
mhm.
and so it inevitably ended up being a very helpful lesson for future endeavors and our Portland trip and everything that happened after that.
Did the Oregon Shakespeare Festival inspire you in any kind of way for this film?
Yeah, I think I had never actually been to a play at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, because by the
Mhm,
time I had really even been here and known about it, we had entered COVID and stuff. So I think that seeing the Elizabethan theater and how big it was and, how pretty it was, and also kind of browsing online, I had
mhm,
developed my own idea of what it was. And, from there, just the buildings and the idea of what it could be inspired the film. I think that, you know, we did communicate with them a little bit on certain aspects of kind of our storyline, and definitely collaborated with them for costuming and those kinds of things. So it's
mhm,
cool to kind of, get in touch with them since so much of it was inspired by them. But not as much as I had kind of hoped for. And I think that going forward, where the Shakespeare Festival is now and kind of what our film had become, um, are kind of two separate entities of
mm,
themselves. I was definitely inspired by the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, but I don't think it's as closely based in truth, as I would like it to be, just because I hadn't really gone and gotten to experience a lot of what they have to offer, just because of the timing of coming down
mhm.
to Oregon. But yeah.
Mm. So at the beginning of your film, like close to the beginning, there was a Shakespeare play going on. Why did you do a beach sequence at the very beginning and then cut right to a Shakespeare play?
Yeah, so, I think, like, the saddest part about this project is that it's just the pilot episode, and
Mm,
with the time constraints that we had on it being a school project, there was a lot of information that was meant to take place in later episodes,
mhm,
and so we kinda left the whole thing on a cliffhanger and are working on, broadening the rest of the series currently, but basically, to get a little bit more into the story is the woman running on the beach at the beginning is Shakespeare's granddaughter, and she's
mhm,
the last person that we see alive with the dagger that belonged to their family, and so cutting from that to the Shakespeare play was to kind of leave the audience in a little bit of suspense of not knowing what was reality, what was a part of this play, because we had kind of set it up to be imagined as if the audience was so engrossed in what was going on stage that they were
mhm,
imagining it as if it was taking place in England at a real castle, because the level of artistry in the play was just amazing. And so putting Elizabeth at the very beginning was to kind of confuse and make everyone question if that was a part of the play. Are we going to come back to it? We see her with the dagger and then we see the dagger in real life. So how does it connect? And to
mhm.
kind of leave the audience wanting more was ultimately the appeal of that.
Well, I can say that at the end, I definitely want to see more. That cliffhanger, I was like, what's gonna happen? I need to know. I need to
Oh
know what's
my
gonna happen.
good. Okay, then it worked. That is like the best compliment of all time. So
um, what made you decide to have a secret door in the hotel?
okay, so I have been obsessed with Nancy Drew forever. I read
Mhm,
all of her books and all of those kinds of things, and I feel like in a staple of Nancy Drew and even things like, I don't know if you've ever seen Murder, She Wrote,
mhm,
um, like those kinds of things, there's always, like, these little hidden passageways and, even Scooby-Doo, there's always kind of a secret. So,
mhm,
I always loved watching those growing up and reading about them, and so I wanted to make my own version of it in something that I creative or and
mhm.
that I created because, when you have the opportunity to make something, you're like, "Well, I'm gonna do all the things that I like, obviously," you know? Plus I honestly kind of wanted the challenge of seeing if it could work because it was
Mhm,
one of those things where when I pitched it to, my professors and things, it was
mhm.
like, "Well, I don't how are you gonna do that?" And I was like, "I don't know, but we're gonna figure it out."
It's
So, yeah,
gonna happen.
just building it, and then we
Uh-huh,
shot the door in a completely separate location as what was inside of the secret passageway, and I think it was just, like, a satisfaction for the crew and for me especially of, like, "Okay, it looks like she's actually going in there right now. We actually do movie magic," so it was a little bit of practicing and to see
mhm.
if we could even do it and also kind of fulfilling a dream of just, "I want a secret passageway in my house someday," you know? Like, I just think
Yeah.
it's I don't know.
I bet you definitely surprised your professors for them thinking you couldn't do it.
Yep, yeah, that was a good feeling for sure.
Why did you decide to do drama and mystery for the genre?
Ooh, okay, I think for me, like, over the course of, like, my college experience, I feel like everything was very serious and,
Mhm,
I felt like the world was kind of in a state of very like, for good reason, everything's very
mhm,
serious and I kinda wanted to do something where it was, like, a little bit more of an escape. I think first and foremost, mystery and drama is just what I watch, and
mhm,
so whatever it is about that intrigues me, also inspires me to write my own stories. I just was confident that I could pull it off,
mhm,
because of just, like, who I am directing those types of scenes. I felt like I not I'm very dramatic, but I feel like, there's people who feel things deeply and I feel like I'm surrounded by those kinds of people and I love the conversations that we have like that. So I
mhm,
felt confident going into that of being able to guide the actors through those scenes and, kind of um take on that role versus something like maybe a comedy might be a little bit more out of my element, it just felt more comfortable and more me to be in that genre.
mhm. And then, so since this film is surrounded by Shakespeare, did you have to do any kind of research for the film?
Yeah, so I did a lot of research about, Shakespeare's life and legacy and
Mhm.
timeline. And also about Ashland, and I had kind of made like basically one massive timeline from Shakespeare's time, with like a lot of gap to the time that Ashland was founded.
Mhm.
Because the idea was that I was trying to kind of like if you've ever seen the movie National Treasure, it's based in reality, but it's not. It's like fiction. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe not fiction. Who knows? But, something like that, to kind of build a structure around, just because I thought it'd be interesting. So I worked on, like, what's Shakespeare's family tree? What was it like back then? Do people really know what happened during his lost years, or is there room for, some kind of fictional narrative that I can create that would be, appropriate to Shakespeare fans? And then also about Shakespeare's plays, what elements can I put in here for Shakespeare lovers and people who are nostalgic about the Shakespeare Festival? And so I ended up doing a lot of research in that way, and then going forward with the rest of the series, have really dove in deep, a lot deeper into those roots to broaden the story and the world that this story takes place in.
Mhm.
So.
Is there anything else you'd like to add about the lost years of Shakespeare?
I would like to add to keep an eye out for the next episode, and also kind of just a restructuring of the plot because we have a
Mhm.
lot more drama, a lot more mystery, and a lot more plot twists coming up. And I'm very excited for everyone to see the future of the Lost Years of Shakespeare.
Thank you so much, Tabitha, for being a part of the Climate Independent Film Festival. Can't wait for everyone to see The Lost Years of Shakespeare.
Yes, thank you so much.